It is a great pleasure to join you in this summit. When I was told about, I was quite excited in that we are in this country witnessing one of the greatest progress in our social sensitivity on the subject of inclusivity. I was born at a time when some members of the society were marginalized by a social philosophy that ni shauri ya Mungu. In our religious tone, when you say shauri ya Mungu, we mean the sovereignty of God, that being is all-powerful and he does as he wills, and that whatever is in the world is because he planned and predestined it. But in fatalism, it has a tone of marginalization. They say they are what they are because they deserve it. That is different. You are where you are because you deserve it. And that was the main philosophy behind many societies in the world for many years. And I have been a champion to make sure that society is sensitized and to reverse that understanding and to understand disability as a possibility for all humanity and not exclusive for a certain people called the disabled. Disability is a possibility of all humanity. And even you who have lived with certain conditions in life, you should not self-marginalize yourself. You should imagine you are a human being like any other person. It is until I reached that stage that I was able to progress as a person and to nurture ambition like any other person in society. Today, I want to, because we have experts who are going to lead us in very deep concepts, as I have listened to the moderator outlining here. Of course, I want to correct something. I was not nominated to the County Assembly in 2013. I think there was an oversight there. I actually contested for senatorial position in Baringo County. We were competing with Gideon Moy, who became the senator for Baringo at that time. And then after that, I was appointed chairman for Kenya Film Classification Board. But before then is when now all these other commissions, I was instrumental in the creation of the, what we call the Gender and Equality Commission, putting to effect Article 59 of our Constitution, and I campaigned. I did so in honor of my late mother, who took care of me in my moments of vulnerability and went against the fatalistic view that our society had to protect me. And I am so proud that Equality Commission is there to make sure that none is marginalized. We are not yet there, but we are on the way. I think the country is progressing well. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share a few thoughts, the driving force, and why that driving force is important in enabling these other details, programs, policy statements that informs the management of our budget in the country, and legislations that creates environment within which the society gets inclusive approach and make sure that everyone is included. So I'm going to, I want to take a little different angle towards it and speak a little bit why leadership matters and why you have been nominated, or your society and community has honored you with elective position in your county. You know, I'm so excited when I'm in Parliament and see someone who is physically challenged has been elected. Yeah? Sometimes when they are nominating, they say, ngoja alafu mpewe ile yenu. You know, that language itself is not healthy. Yani hatupi iliyo yetu, munatoa ile ya katiba. The Constitution creates room for nomination. And I want to encourage you, I want to give you a motivation by the title that I have chosen, that leadership matters. Leadership matters. At the position and a privileged position that the society has given it to you, let me use it in philosophy, the spirit of time has allowed you to play. Remember, you have been given that opportunity not to fulfill the clarion call for inclusivity, but you have been given an opportunity to become a leader. I wish to repeat that. I want you to look at your position in county assembly as an opportunity to lead, to provide leadership. You live beyond and look beyond the boundary of your limitation and see the capacity that you have that the society needs. Because you can do what everybody else is doing. I have been in the public. I joined the service in the church as a young man in 1974. I remember in July, and I was ordained as a lay minister in 1977. And I went through a lot of experiences that tried to resist me, that I cannot be one of the leaders. That was it. Number one, I started school when I was late. When I wrote my exams, Standard 7, that was CPE, and I passed very well. I had an A in English, an A in mathematics, and I had a B plus in general paper then. So I had 34 points out of 36. I only missed 2. Don't you see I'm normal like anybody else? But then, when the letter inviting me to secondary school, my relatives came and told me, you don't have to go up there. You are already 27 years old. Your job is just on the grassroots. You need to be a cobbler. No, there is nothing wrong with a cobbler. Even the father of one of the presidents of America was a cobbler. That's the father of Abraham Lincoln. But it becomes wrong when an attitude is tacked on it, that because you are on the ground there, you belong to the business down there. My sister was sympathizing with me. No, he was empathizing. That can you speak where you are, or somewhere here, or what? Yani, because he wants to accommodate some of the limitations. Look at what technology has done. It has lifted me to where she was, and I can now still do the way she was doing. I actually did it on purpose because I wanted to pass on a message. And they told me, just, your business is down there. I told him, I know you're right, brother. You have been up there too long. You are looking at life downward. But I want to tell you, I've been down here too long, and now I'm looking at things upward. So we can meet in the middle. As you come, I go. So I had to go to university. I had to finish high school. I had to go to university and then continued the rest of my life. Then came the second thing. I was of age and I needed to marry. You see, the fact that the legs are crooked, it doesn't mean the mind is crooked. I have a right upside mind. So I looked at the lady. She was singing in the choir. And I tell you, my friend, she was so beautiful. And you can understand the business now there. So finally, I declared I'm marrying her, and my society was also shocked. And they asked her a question. You mean you could not find a man to marry all over, and then you get something like a frog come to you? You can see, and I had to break that barrier. I honor this lady. My mother, my wife, the mother of my children, we've lived together over 40 years, 50 years, and she remains beautiful. But we broke the ceiling of disability tag. I provided leadership. When God called me to the ministry, that's what we say in the church, and I went through the panels, and the church elder sat, and I remember that old man sitting, and he said, Jackson, do you want to serve in the church full-time or part-time? I understood what he meant. In other words, can you manage to become a role model pastor in the condition in which you are? That is what he said without saying. And I asked him, I've been around and you have listened to me. Do I have what it takes to become one? And I saw him shedding tears and said, yes. And if the Almighty has said, who am I to stop you? So the rest is history. When after serving in the church for the years, over 45 years, I retired, and then I ventured into politics. And when I contested, this is what people said. They said, wewe unatosha ile yenu, hauna nafasi hapa. Again, I came forward, and by the grace of God, I have not disappointed you, all right? I have not disappointed, and I provided leadership. And to show the world, to show the society that everyone can do. So that's the first thing in my introduction as I go briefly to some of the thoughts that I wish to share with you, is that why is it important to consider inclusivity in budgeting and legislation? Because for a disabled person, let me use this word because I'm not shy, because I'm one of them, so don't worry about it. I'm using that. Sometimes we fear to use it because, and it is unnecessary to feel disappointed about it because it is a reality in life. To serve as a disabled or a person with challenge, or let me use the words used in this meeting, differently enabled, is expensive. Because what a normal person does, you do twice to be the same. You work so hard to reach where others are. There is the social dimension, you got to explain why you should be included. And then there is the assistive system to be given to you to be able to go. For me to climb onto these stairs, it takes a different approach of coming up. There should be a ramp. So there must be an extra cost to this, both in county assembly hall or chamber. The budget must have that in mind, that we have members who requires more than the usual facilities. You buy a car, that car, if you have to drive as a person living with certain challenges, that car must be customized to fit you. Again, it is another expense. You need an assistant, somebody who will aid, will help you. And therefore, there is an increase in the budget. And it takes a person with great understanding, but not a mean person controlling the purse, because he will limit you even visiting, going out for what we call the privileges of going for benchmarking with the rest of your. There is a silent curtailing principle called bureaucratic discrimination, where they say, okay, let Elizabeth not to go this time, or Fatima not to go for this trip because it is too long, it is too cumbersome, it may not be really, and it will be very expensive, because instead of one person, we have to pay two people to go at the same time. And then they dodge you and say, maybe wait until when an opportunity comes for you to go to Arusha, or then you're limited. It is important that inclusivity must speak to budgeting. Inclusivity must speak to budgeting. That the needs for our friends and brothers and sisters in the assembly, fellow colleagues and members of county assembly, as it is in National Assembly or Senate, they should be given an opportunity to access such opportunities given to the members equally. And that will speak about an extra coin. In any case, it cannot be too expensive, because the percentage in county assembly is small. It used to be, it has, by law, is about 5%, but we have not achieved that. You know, we don't have that. We don't have the 5%. We kidogo. But that little, about 2% or 1% or 3%, the budgeting must speak to it. So the second thing which is very important is the legislation. Because you cannot be protected by a good speaker of county assembly, a very good speaker of National Assembly, or a very good and good-hearted clerk, or a good chairman of a department committee to consider you. We don't need that. We don't need good people. We need the law. You must be protected by the law, so that when they look at it, they say, what does the law and policies are? So we, as members of county assembly, when you think about inclusivity in budgeting, and when that motion comes to the floor of the House, take it as if it is yours. Because it's not about don't think about let us think about our brothers and sisters, namnai. No. Think about it as a safeguard for every member. I was being told, you remember one time I had some kind of misunderstanding with the 540, fly 540, you remember? I entered into the flight in Eldoret. When we reached Nairobi, they didn't have facilities for me to climb down the stairs. And you know, then I was a member of the KECOBAC. It's called Kenya Consumers Advisory Council Committee. And you know, so I said, this is now food for me. I said, I will not come down out of this plane until, one, I am given with a lift-on chair that can exit me with dignity. Number two, that I am speaking to the policy of the airline, that they should be inclusive in transport. We had altercation for about 40 minutes, and we had to go to the police station to record it. And we had to go all the way to meeting the both committees, joint committees of the Senate and the National Assembly to address the issue, and that spoke to so many improvements going on in our airports by entry and going out. And I remember the comments that were in the meeting. One reminded us of a member of National Assembly who went to Germany for what we call benchmarking, exchange program, and so on. She went when she was all right, like anybody else. They used to have the committee meeting held up there in the first floor, and you must walk the stairs up. By the time she came back, she was paralyzed, and she was seated on a wheelchair. All the meetings had to be rescheduled to be done ground floor before the facilities are made that goes up to make sure that first floor is accommodative. So when this comes to the floor of the House and discussed, it's not a question of mental exercise, but it is dealing with a necessity for humanity. It's like building an hospital. We don't build hospitals because of some people called sick, but we build an hospital because of the citizens, including myself, you and I, in our moments of vulnerability, that we can be hosted there and treated and then come back and stand on our feet. Some of the disabilities are temporary, others are permanent, others are long-term. You can be temporarily, and soon you will come back to your feet. Notwithstanding miracles that can happen. Without any of that being considered, there is a moment when you cannot do what you are supposed to do as a human being. So let us, members of County Assembly, hasten, and especially the right timing is between now and maybe towards the end of the year, but up to mid maybe next year. After that, politics. These are the bills, kusaidia watu itakwisha. What remains only is a government bill that can go through because the system pushes it. So if you have to do anything that is going to help in such matters as inclusivity, do it now. That is what we are at Kadiba. We are providing an overall national policy in terms of legislations that will inform what you will be doing as you do it, as we reflect our constitution And we are reviewing the Act of 2003. We want to have it more responsive, more inclusive, there are some of the disability challenges which are appearing now that were never included before in our definition, but we want this law to speak to it. This way, and this will inform the budgeting, the increase in the budgeting. So that when you budget in the county, it will be a reflection of the National Assembly and also the Senate. Although the importance of grassroots leaders like you are leaders of national importance, closer to the people, more than any other arrangements. You are closer to where they said where the rubber touches the road. Being close there, it is so crucial for development because it is you who are so close to the people targeted by development. I wish to repeat that, you see your importance, so that we avoid ourselves wasting our own time arguing about national or what is going on. If you can focus on the people there to make the difference, the spirit of time will reward you with great growth and great opportunities in the world. Being closer to the people as county assembly and as an MCA, in any capacity you serve in, you are able to ensure that development initiatives not only is meeting the needs for persons with disability. In the new law, we are now considering about caregivers of those people who are differently gifted. We want the law overall to consider them. Disability has an impact not only on the person, but it has also an impact on those around them, around those such people. And it is you, for example, who needs to set them free, but we want to make sure that the law in Kediba, we would like to caucus it, and the National Assembly is agreeing. I'm sure the leader of majority, when he brings it to Parliament in some few months, a little kidogo, it will go through. When that comes, we want to pay attention to the caregivers. So that at County Assembly, you need to understand how and where they live, what kind of an environment they are in. They need what you call bigger space in maneuvering, and all that are services that are given. Even if you can make it traditionally with what is available, but it will be our duty, and you as a member of County Assembly, you are closer to them where they live. We need to know how the caregivers are going about in supporting persons with such needs in our society. You know, I've never been challenged to understand disability than when I read about Anne Alice Kaler of United States of America. She was both blind and dumb. She cannot speak, she cannot see, and she became one of the greatest renowned individuals in history. What made the difference? It is the caregivers that took care of her. So when we speak about inclusivity in budgeting and legislation, we are very intentional. We are targeting in enabling the person to be functional, to participate with the rest of the leaders and colleagues. We also are speaking to the environment within which they live and the caregivers that take care of them. So policy philosophers, policy makers, and philosophers behind the great thinkers like my brother here. When you think about it along that line, that we want to expand the scope of divination of budgeting and legislation. So I want to conclude by saying when we speak to both budgeting and legislation, we should be guided by that background, that what we want to address is the functionality, exploiting the potential in the person, and also create an environment within which is going to operate and by providing assistive devices and make sure that the facilities around is accessible. Accessibility must be done, and so on. And finally, we need to think about their welfare. We want to put it into law. It was in government policy that when others are retiring at 60, persons with challenges retire at 65. It was just an policy. It is going to appear in this coming amendment. It will be expanded and it will be enjoyed by law. And I'm sure even as you write in county legislation, now that is the direction of the national policy. It was given as a policy by public service, but now it is going to become the law. So finally, leadership matters, therefore, to be able to make all these things happen. We must have a mindset that goes beyond our lifetime. Leadership matters because everything rises and falls at the feet of leadership. If you do not have good leadership, and that is a collective response, it takes more than one person. Leadership also matters because the people we lead matter. The people we lead matter. And as long as there are people in the world, they matter enough to be provided with leadership. It is that leadership that makes everybody else, madam, to feel included. When leadership is not there, human behaves in a manner that they are selfish. So long as I still survive, the others, waja, let all that take care of themselves. And finally, leadership matters because it affects us in different facets of society. You ignore leadership, it will affect you. It will affect your faith. Whether you are a believer, whether you believe in yourself, it will affect you. When leadership is there, it can demoralize you, it can give you motivation. Also, leadership matters because it affects our resources. Where there is no leadership, resources are really mismanaged, and it is not beneficial to the people. Leadership matters because it affects our family. So you can't say we don't only lead to be known to be making laws and politicking. We lead because we got families that needs to survive. We got people who needs to prepare a next generation. If you don't care about your family and the families you lead, you will have nobody in future. Sometimes we fear to say this, but because I got a background from what we call the moral conviction, I wish to tell you as a leader, there are things that matter in your society, and one of them is the preservation and taking care of families. Because the stronger your families are, the stronger your society is. And as you stay, I will not forget, and as you lead for 5 years, have this in mind. And I'm leaving with this quote, which was said by a lady called Maya Angelou. quote, I have learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. End of quote. As you lead, don't forget yourself. Mheshimiwa, Mheshimiwa, hujaheshimiwa peke yako. Kuna wengine walioheshimiwa mbele yako. But I want to say, don't forget yourself. Build yourself. Make sure that 2027, when it comes, you may be elected, you may not. You may be nominated, you may not. But you should be able to live beyond 5 years. So don't forget yourself. And use this opportunity to make investment for the days of your vulnerability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. A round of